I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I clever I would be. I'm not half as clever as me.
Welcome to the 20th episode of Brains Matter for Wednesday the 7th of March 2007. On today's show, you'll be hearing about Armand Fizzo, a brain teaser, some information about fossil fuels and octane numbers, and the pin of the week.
Searchlights pan and trace the sky. A midnight bomber's wings on high. Sirens' voices cry out.
Most people are no stranger to the term light year, which is the distance that light travels in a year. Despite having the word year in it, it's actually a measure of distance and not time. We measure the distance of things in the universe in terms of light years because, well, if we were to measure everything in kilometres, we'd have more zeros at the end of huge numbers than we could poke a proverbial stick at. For years, many scientists thought that light had an infinite speed. If that were the case, we couldn't measure distance in light years at all, and everything that happened would be observable at the exact instant that it happened. We know this isn't true today. It takes minutes for the light from the sun to reach the Earth, as an example. If light had an infinite speed, as soon as the light was given off, it'd hit the Earth. Who do we have to thank for the calculation of the speed of light? There was a French physicist named Armand Hippolyte Louis Fizzo, who lived between 1819 and 1896. Originally, his work centred around the process of photography, but then he got into the study of light interference. After that, and perhaps because V8 cars weren't common in 19th century France, he got hooked on speed. He discovered the Doppler effect, the speed of light, which I'll get to in a moment, and then the speed of electricity. And, as opposed to a V8 car driver, when he said more power during his electricity studies, he was probably being literal. Okay, maybe not. Many others had tried to figure out the speed of light before Fizzo. I keep wanting to call him Hippo, since it's such a great name, but I digress. Isaac Beekman in 1629, Galileo in 1638, and the interest by Robert Hooke and Descartes in Galileo's experimental method, Ole Rømer in 1676, and a few others. But none were able to get it, or to sway those who thought that light was infinitely fast. Fizzo was the first to successfully measure it in 1849. He carried out his experiment in Paris, between a house at Montmartre and a hill at Suresnes, which was 8.67 kilometres away. He put a rotating toothed wheel with 720 gaps at Montmartre and a mirror at Suresnes. When the wheel wasn't moving, light passed through one gap and was reflected. When the wheel was rotated slowly, the light was blocked from the observer. When the wheel was turned rapidly, the reflected light passed through the next gap. Fizzo noted that at a speed of 25 revolutions per second, this would happen. He used this observation and mathematically calculated that the speed of light was 312,320 kilometres per second. Today, we know the value to be 299,792 kilometres per second, which means it was only around 4% off. Not bad, given that he had no computers or other similar technology which makes it so easy for us today.
Welcome to the Hardline.
And now it's time for today's brain teaser. What temperature is absolute zero? The answer to that towards the end of the show.
Staring through a window, silence in a pause, telling me something, telling me nothing, fighting for a cause.
We all use fossil fuels in today's world, even if we don't drive, and even if we don't mean to. The light you switch on at night time? Chances are that the power generated to light that globe came from a coal fire station. Depending on where you live, of course, it might also be from a nuclear or hydro source, or if you live in a more progressive area, perhaps even solar or wind. But you'd be pretty safe in assuming it's mostly from coal. Coal, oil and natural gas are called fossil fuels because they're made up of the remains of organisms that lived up to 500 million years ago. Most of these organisms were incorporated into sediment and with the assistance of time and pressure were converted to oil and gas. Coal is generally the remains of plants and trees that were buried and subjected to pressure, temperature and chemical processes for millions of years. The largest oil field in the world is the Guaha field, which was discovered in 1948 and is, surprise surprise, found in Saudi Arabia. It measures around 240 kilometres by 35 kilometres. For those of you that do drive and use petrol in your cars, you've probably heard of octane numbers. In Australia, we have 91 octane unleaded petrol and 98 or higher octane for premium unleaded petrol. Most people know that 98 octane is better fuel than the standard unleaded or 91 octane. But apart from the fact that premium costs more, how do we know it's better? What's this so-called octane number? The octane number is a measure of the petrol's ability to resist pinging or knocking in an engine caused by premature ignition of the fuel. Two test fuels are used, normally heptane and isooctane, and these are blended to figure out the octane number. Normal heptane has an octane number of 0, and isooctane has a value of 100. The fuels are then compared to the test blends to find out which has the same knock as the test fuel. The octane rating of the petrol under testing is the percentage of isooctane required to produce the same amount of knock. For example, if the test blend has 80% isooctane in it, then it's said to have an octane rating of 80. The octane rating on petrol pumps is an average of octane ratings determined in laboratory tests using this method. With petrol, there's not just a choice of premium unleaded and unleaded. Older cars that were built before 1986 mostly use leaded petrol. Why does some petrol have lead and some not? Contrary to what you might have thought, unleaded petrol doesn't have the lead taken out of it. Leaded petrol actually has lead added to it. Tetraethyl lead used to get added to petrol for well over 40 years because the engines needed the level of lubrication provided by the lead to operate properly. The lead reduced knocking, especially in parts of the engine where oil had a tendency to wash away or burn off. Newer cars are able to handle this, and the lead is no longer added for health reasons. Lead poisoning is definitely not a good thing. And the first service station was opened in 1895 in Bordeaux in France. The services it offered were overnight parking, repairs, and refills of oils and what they called motor spirit. Sounds like they did more back then than they do today. I haven't even started yet on diesel. That's another discussion for another day, but there are various other sources for diesel fuel, such as from plants. You'll have heard of biodiesel, but I'll talk about that another day. Did you figure out the answer to the brain teaser? The temperature of absolute zero is minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. Pin of the week for today goes to Brad from Gainesville, Florida in the United States. Thanks for signing the Frappomat, Brad, and I hope you've been enjoying the show. that brings me to the end of episode 20. Feel free to drop me an email at mail@brainsmatter.com or by leaving a comment on the show notes at www.brainsmatter.com. The Neuropa music on today's show comes courtesy of Alberto Martinez from Riveting Promotions, and you can find out more about Neuropa at www.neuropa.biz. That's www.neuropa.biz. If you enjoyed the show, you can show your support by voting for Brains Matter at Podcast Alley. Remember, you can vote for the show every month. You can also leave a comment in iTunes or donate via PayPal. I'll leave you with a quote from Samuel Johnson. Integrity without knowledge is weak and useless, and knowledge without integrity is dangerous and dreadful. Bye for now.
I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I thought I might be, for that's clear anybody to see. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I smart I am. I'm not as think as I clever I would be. I'm not half as clever as me.